I've been doing political podcasting since 2008, where we did the Slightly Correct Political Show. Me and Jeremy Elwood did one for the election cycle. And I was saying back then that the left is fractured and the right is solid. The left has all these different messaging and all these little small groups, and the right speaks with one voice. And in my opinion, if you look at the Western world, the left in general are bigger. They're bigger groups of the population are left wing, but because it's so fractured, you'll get a group going, fuck it, I'm not going to participate this time around. And so the left is more apathetic. And that's how the right manages to compete 50-50. Because when you have a look, I mean, the clearest example is in America, how the college voting system, whatever it's called, the left wins that vote every single year. I think since 1995, the right has won it once, and that was the second term of George W. Bush when there was an Iraq war. Other than that, there's been more people voting for the left than the right since 1995. And it mirrors the world over. But the right is much better organized. They're much better on message, and they push through. We talked a little bit last week, and we're not going to get into that conversation because we said we're not going to talk about that anymore. But we talked a little bit last week about how Chewy and I had an incident where all of a sudden the people we were sitting in the boat with just went and jumped on us and then kicked us out of the boat, and it became a point of conversation. I had interactions with lots of people behind the scenes who were like, "What the fuck's going on? What's going on here?" And this came up this week, and it really is sort of a conversation between lots of people, or 3 or 4 people, who are incredibly well informed about the political world. Now, when they talk about Democrat, think left. When they talk about Republican, think right. I know you know that, but I think when they say the Republicans can and the Democrats can, what we're saying in New Zealand is the left can and the right can, and I think it's just as valid to think about it from their political perspective way. So this is a conversation. These 3 guys sitting at the table are Pod Bless America. That's their podcast, and obviously Jon Stewart in the inlay here. They were talking about how Trump is an example of how the right does what they want when they want. So the left is apologetic for everything. The left eats its own. And you'll hear the phrase in here, the left seem to love policing their own. When I was listening to this today and I heard that thought, I went, let's play this. Because what I would want more than anything is because look, if you're just joining us and you've just come across us because of some algorithm, you don't know this yet, we are ardently and obviously on the left of politics, but we very much say we walk and chew gum at the same time, and you will get us both praising the right and criticizing the left, should that be the warrantable story of the day, right? But in an ideal world, for me personally and me politically, I want to see the left succeed. And so what I hope these kind of clips can do is actually almost be like a bit of a masterclass, and actually what is happening and what we can do should the left want to be more successful. Cool, Chewy?
Yep.
Right. So the setup for this is basically saying, on the left, if someone does one thing wrong, and they don't say this, and I'm being a bit facetious here, but use one wrong pronoun or one wrong word when they were 16 on a Twitter feed, they basically get cast out. The right has a guy called Donald Trump who cheats with a porn star whilst his wife's pregnant, grabs people by the pussy, and then gets elected president, and they don't care. And that's kind of where this conversation starts.
Now, that guy hasn't scrubbed his social media. Like, he'd have to do it every 11 minutes. He's a guy who goes out there and says, he's an antibiotic resistant candidate. And maybe that's what you need. He had sex with an adult movie star while his wife was pregnant, paid her $130,000 as hush money, and still married. And his lawyer's the one who ends up going to jail. Is there?
And remember, running for the party of family values. That's the bit that I don't want to, I'm not, Jon Stewart never says anything wrong, but to add to what he's saying, running for the family of quote unquote family values, and they still elect him with that background.
Chappelle used to have a very funny bit where he'd be like, Democrats, man, it's like Republicans can do whatever they want. Democrats can't even sniff hair. Like, is there, are Democrats in some respects policing their own in a manner that's presumptive? Like, look at what happened to Al Franken. You have a situation where in the midst of this movement.
Let me explain that in case people don't know that. Al Franken was on a comedy tour. I think it was like in Iraq or somewhere like that. It was on a base, and there was a female soldier who was asleep. And Al Franken did this thing where he put his hands up like that towards her breast, didn't touch her, didn't actually assault her, but looked at the camera, was like, doing this silly sort of comedic sort of a thing, not appropriate now, not appropriate at the time, did it. That's what Al Franken actually did. In case you don't know, like it's not a a Weinstein or even a Louis C.K. or anything like that. There was a photo of Al Franken kind of pretending to grab a woman's breasts. And I know it feels weird saying that, like it's not a big deal, but he never actually did it. It wasn't an actual assault. It was a silly, inappropriate gesture. So that's what Al Franken did, just so to bring context to what Stewart's saying.
I've actually got the photo if you want.
Oh, okay. We'll show it. Show the photo and we'll come back. Look there. Actually, I don't. Is he touching? Maybe he is touching. I didn't think he was touching. That was
it's hard to say that, but also she's wearing a flak jacket from the looks of it. So, but yeah, that was enough. And when it came out, he kind of went, "Yep, my bad, I did that. I'm out."
And he left politics. So that's that was so we have a context for you. That was what Al Franken did. So we'll let Jon Stewart continue.
Movement. Al Franken has to be removed from the Senate for something that there's people in the Senate right now that have done far worse that's known about. And there are no repercussions from voters or anyone else.
I think you can sort of step back from, I think that the pattern there is a bigger one. And it's we talk about it so much, it's hard to always go back to it as the answer, but we have two different media environments. We see all the time, one of the questions we get all the time from people is like, why are Republicans so good at messaging and why are Democrats so good at messaging? Why do Democrats come after their own and Republicans don't? How do Democrats get tagged with defund the police and Republicans don't? How can Trump do all these different things and these Democrats can't get away with anything? And you step back and it's like, it's not because Republicans are brilliant. It's not because they have they're so sophisticated about messaging compared to us. They have a giant propaganda apparatus that covers Democrats in a way that pulls up the things that are the most divisive, that are the worst for Democrats politically, and B, inoculates Republicans against some of their worst excesses. Look, you have Lindsey Graham going out there proposing a national abortion ban, incredibly politically stupid. Even Mitch McConnell trying to get out of talking about it. Doesn't get the hype on Fox News that you would expect for something that would be really popular with their base. Why? They recognize that it's not advantageous for them. So not only do they tar Democrats over and over again in a way that spills over into the mainstream political punditry, they also kind of provide a big bubble for their right-wing crowd that's much more insulated from the stories that would hurt their own side or make them skeptical of the rest.
But I would go one step.
So there's the first clip. Chewy, do you want to add anything to that? I've got a second clip to play as well, but the second clip is more Jon Stewart giving an example of what we're talking about when he talks about media. But that's the first point. So, I when I heard him say, and I'll say it again, that the left love to police their own, I'm like, fucking, that's exactly what it is. The left are, I don't know, what's the word when you hold yourself up to be a good example of something, and if everyone doesn't reach your level of holiness, then they're terrible people. Like it's like that Kevin Hart thing, and I'm not saying this was the left necessarily, but Kevin Hart made some homophobic jokes and stuff in an era where society, whether we like it or not, society had deemed those jokes to be acceptable within a comedy scene. Right? He subsequently apologized for those jokes. He learned the error of his ways. He knew society was moving. He said, I did wrong. And he apologized for them. Years later, they came out again. He got dropped from the Oscars and he had to do the whole thing again. Apologize. Even though he had mended his ways, he had mea culpa, he had apologized, he had realized that was not appropriate to today, and it was offensive today. And I know a lot of people were saying, well, it wasn't appropriate back then. I'm sorry, not to burst your bubble. Within society had deemed it okay by making it acceptable within that comedy concept and complex. Whether you think it's offensive based on today's filters, whether you think it was offensive based on those filters back then, it was a different age, and society had deemed it okay by supporting that kind of comedy. Society may not deem it quite as okay today, and there's a different outcome. Now, I think it's fair to say it was never okay. I'm with you. Fine, that's fine. But you can't hold someone accountable to today's standards based on a societal standard of yesteryear. Now, criminal activity, you can hold someone accountable based on criminal activity from today or 20 years ago. But societal standards, you can't. If you could, we would not have, and I'm only speaking about comedy, and you're the expert here, Chewy, you would not have comedy from prior to 2010 be available anywhere in the world. You just wouldn't. One of the greatest comedic stand-up sets is Eddie Murphy in Delirious.
I was just going to say, Delirious and Raw.
He says
Far
some
out.
horrific things in there about the gay community today. At the time, they weren't deemed horrific. Were they horrific? You can say yes. I'll take your word. At the time, they weren't. Was that wrong? Yes, it was. But at the time, it wasn't. So you can't judge Eddie Murphy, who ironically hasn't been judged for those comments, where people like Kevin Hart have been. You can't judge him today based on what he did as a 21-year-old comic in 1986 or whatever it was, and say, therefore, you're, I hate the word canceled today based on what you did back there. Now, if he did it today, different story, but not then. But the left likes to eat their own. It's almost like the left are competing with each other and the right are competing as one. It's almost like the left goes, I'm the most virtuous. I'm going to be at the top of the Twitter pile. I know I can knock you off by putting up that tweet from well, it won't be 19, will it? Or that comment in your yearbook from 1994. And because of that, when you were 16, I'm going to get you cancelled today. And that makes me the most virtuous and me the most right until you fuck up and then you get the pile on. The left likes to eat its own. The left likes to police their own, as was just said. Sorry, Chew, I finished my rant.
You stole all of my talking points by bringing up Eddie Murphy. God damn it.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah, look, I was just going to say, like, if it was the same, like, I mean, I'm, because we were talking about American politics, I'm thinking it from their lens. It's amazing that a lot of these guys can run on a moral standpoint. You know, they're good, God-fearing Christian people, and because of that, we're going to ban abortion, and we're going to be anti-gay, anti-trans, anti all of this sort of stuff. We're not going to help poor people because I'm a good Christian. None of it gels. None of it gels, and they don't give a fuck because the people that are voting for them are just listening for that one word, Christian. Yep. Christian Republican, 2 words. I don't care what he's done. I like what he's saying. And usually what that boils down to is we don't like the same people.
Yeah.
You know? And I just wish we kind of had, oh God, I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud. I just wish we had a little bit of that from our side as well, of somebody just going, these are the things that we believe in. And if you don't like that, I don't care. I'm just going to do it because that's what the people that voted for me want. It almost seems like the left spends a lot of, as you said, a lot of their own time policing their own team. And also at the same time, trying to convince people that hate them that they're not as left as they are. When all around we have found that there's more people that would vote for social policy. There's more people that would vote for socialist policy. And the only way that we can balance that is to pour a shit ton of money into the other side to mess with the process, to mess with how democracy is run, to stand up a multinational news organization to put those voters in a bubble and radicalize them. And thank God we haven't got Murdoch Media in New Zealand, but places like the Herald and News Talk are certainly doing their best to be the New Zealand version of it. It's certainly not as bad, if you can say that, but they're definitely trying to do the same thing. Like Gareth in the comments says here, News Talk ZB, highest listened to radio station. We've spoken about that in the past. And the key is the listeners only listen to that station. They don't get their news or views from anywhere else. They are in that bubble. And that's the hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's become more evident to me over recent times. I'm doing these mayoralty conversations, and there's a particular candidate in Dunedin who's an abhorrent asshole. If you want to know who I'm talking about, then just go to my Twitter feed or go to my blog, patbrittenden.com, and I've written an article that says why I won't be voting for him. And the answer is because he's an asshole.
Oh,
He does.
which asshole? There's a couple.
Well, no, there's only one proper asshole. And the point that's been made to me by numerous people who are involved in the press and media world in Dunedin is that he gets a lot of number one votes in STV, and then he gets nothing else because he's got a constituency that are like, this is the guy, this is the only guy, this is the one. But no one goes, oh, he'd be my second choice and it's the same as the echo chamber of Newstalk ZB, right? It's all they listen to. He's the only one they'll vote for, but he doesn't get 2s, 3s, 4s, or 5s, with the STV voting system.
There's a really good thing to be considerate of that as well. And we saw a little bit of this last local body election. I think we're going to see it a lot more this time around here in Dunedin. And I would be very wary of it for the next national level elections as well, is when those people are so in that bubble and everyone that they talk to says that this is the guy that's going to win and we've all voted for him and it doesn't happen. Well, then what's the next logical thing? It's a fix-up. It's a fraud. The election's been stolen.
Yeah.
We saw that in the States. We could see that here, both local and national levels, of people just going, but I was so sure. My entire social group said that they were voting for him, and all the people in the Facebook group that I'm in said the same thing. And there were heaps of us. So how is it that they've lost? And it is a combination of not understanding how the voting system works and just not realizing that you've been screaming into a bucket with a whole bunch of other people. You won't allow someone in to counter your worldview.
As you were talking, and I didn't want to interrupt because I'm polite like that, I thought if people aren't following me on Twitter, they should, because I'm just about to, at the end of the show, oh, look at that, 2,000 followers. Nice. I'm going to tweet this out because I've just had a little realization while we've been talking. Oh, thanks, Christine. And that is this. The left want to win the right way, as in the correct way. They want to do things properly, right? They want to do things correctly. They want to win the right way. They want to win what they think is the moral way. The right want to win. The left want to do it the correct way. The right just want to do it. And that's why
like
you get
someone's got a straighter path.
And so what you'll get is, if you get the left and segments within the left, one segment of the left going, we're doing it the right way, and another segment going, we're doing it the right way, and they go, well, no, you're not, then you've got the fracture. If you've got a philandering, cheating, lying, person who's going to be your nominee, who has paid off prostitutes with hush money and arguably committed crimes left, right, and center, who ended up being your nominee, then you get behind them because all you're worried about is winning. So the left want to win the correct way. The right just want to win. And that's why the elections are 50-50.